Hi everyone, Eliza and Dan here from Fireside Strategic. We're on a mission to help business leaders achieve great results through human-centered strategy. We believe that businesses don't need to choose between investing in their humans and generating profit because it's the humans that create profit. In the Fireside Chat series, we're showcasing how leaders are transcending the challenges of the coronavirus crisis and broadly unite strategic and human thinking and leadership. Today, we're excited to chat with Nicole Michel-Deshagette, CEO of Translingua. Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, thank you for having me today on Fireside Chat. My name is Nicole Michel-Deshagette, as Lisa already mentioned, and my company is Translingua. Translingua is a translation company with headquarters in New York and offices in Boulder, Colorado.
That's great to hear, Nicole, and welcome to the Fireside Chat. Can you tell us about who your customers are?
Translingua serves a lot of different customers, actually, in the United States and abroad. We have from people who walk in from the streets with their birth certificates and high school transcripts that need to be translated because they have to go to school, to large corporations like Campbell Soup, who needs their soup labels translated into Chinese or into Spanish, or lawyers with contracts, lawyers who have depositions and need an interpreter, for example. So it really runs the gamut. And in terms of industries as well, we work for the medical and pharmaceutical industry. We work in banking and finance. We work with a lot of companies, HR departments, who do things like employee surveys, for example, or trainings. They have training materials, for example, or as well as actual trainings when they do the trainings with, let's say, 100 or 200 employees. Then we might have an interpreter in there because there are 20 Spanish speakers in there who are taking the training but don't really understand everything. So to facilitate that, we send an interpreter and with headsets, and everybody understands what's going on.
Beautiful. So that's a great description of what you do. I'm curious what your underlying mission is, what your why is.
Well, as I said, we're a translation company, so we help other people communicate in other languages. And really our mission is to help other people communicate effectively and efficiently in other languages. That's really the key, because there are a lot of different translation options out there, as you may know, and especially today with technology, it's become easy to just go on Google Translate, for example, and say, okay, I want to translate this, but in a business setting, or if you have important things to communicate, this is not always a very good idea. Because the automatic translation has become very, sophisticated, actually. However, it still lacks nuance, and it lacks that in between the lines intent that you may have. So if you have a marketing text or an advertising text, or if there's a certain appeal to your on a certain message, an underlying message, it's really important that human beings work with it, in addition to the tools that they may use that are, CAT tools, as we call it, that's computer-aided translation. But it's always important to have that human touch, because only humans kind of can interpret the messages that come to us and that have to then be converted into another cultural context, not just into another language. And so that is kind of the challenge that we see very often.
That's beautiful. I love that you're moving beyond just the basic one word becomes another, but you're first of all translating whole ideas with that human connection, but beyond that, you're uniting cultures.
Exactly. And it's not just about translating words as we usually say. A lot of people, come to us and say, well, how much do you charge per word? And that's kind of, to us, it's funny sometimes, or, but we have to understand that a lot of people don't understand the world of translation. So they hear these things and they hear that you can charge per word or per page or whatever it is. And so we have to often explain to them that it's not just about that word for word or the per word price. There's a lot more to it. Why do you charge $75 for 3 words? Well, it's not $25 per word. It's a minimum fee to deal with that 3-word text, perhaps, because a 3-word text, honestly, can be a lot more difficult than 200 pages. Because a 3-word text may be an advertising text, and the 200 pages are a contract, which is pretty much boilerplate, and that you can, do easily. Of course, that costs more. 200 pages costs more than $75, but it's the concept that counts. It's not about the words. It's about what you want to communicate and how effectively, in fact, you're then going to communicate it. And that's what we really want to do for our clients, is bring that message across to the other culture in an effective way, so you can be successful in what you want to do with your clients and with your employees, for example.
Mm. And so some purchasers may be sensitive to the cost of paying for translation. They may be less sensitive to the cost of getting something wrong, of communicating the wrong message.
Exactly. And unfortunately, today, a lot of it is about, streamlining and about getting the lowest possible price per unit, etc. So we're often up against that when we do bids, for example, for government or for larger corporations who are looking for the lowest bidder, or they're looking for that unit price and compare unit prices, but sometimes they're comparing apples and oranges, because some bids that they may get with lower unit prices don't include all the services that we're including when you deal with us, for example. It's about service level too. I mean, I can give you a translation, give it to the translator, have it back, send it to you, and that's it. But I can have a translation, have the translator think about, what's going on there with that text, make it culturally appropriate, have it looked at by another translator, throw around some ideas. Oh, yes, but that may be something different. Maybe we have to phrase that in a different way to not offend someone, or however you want to look at it. And at the end, do a quality check and then give it to you. So that's already a lot more involved. And obviously that costs more.
I love that. So we are in an interesting time today, very internationally connected time
Right.
with this COVID pandemic. Would you mind giving us an insight of what was happening with Translingua before the crisis hit, and how has it impacted your business?
Well, before the crisis hit, we've already been in some leaner times before. 9/11 happened, 2008 happened. We survived both. We live in a very international world, in a very international city here in New York. But our activity has not been affected to the point where we suffered a lot. We had to make adjustments. That's clear. You always have to adjust to those things. And we were actually on a course of growth before the pandemic hit. Also because we recently, as recent as last year, were certified as a woman-owned business, and that has given us more opportunity on a state level, federal level, even on the city level. And we're partnering with new organizations based on that, and we're doing pretty well. And the pandemic hits, one part of our business is completely shut down. And that's interpretation. We haven't talked about that yet, because we do written translation, but we also do interpretation, which is spoken. And, you know, we work for UN affiliated organizations, NGOs, who have conferences about humanitarian topics, about women's rights, human rights, about access to education. We do interpretation for schools, for their parent-teacher conferences, for example, or meetings. We do depositions for lawyers. We go to court, all of that. But all of that came to a shrieking halt really fast, because all of a sudden we're not supposed to be together and communicate one-on-one. And so that one-on-one element for interpretation, you know, no more. We had to adapt real quick. And we have basically shifted all our activity online and can offer now all types of interpretation, not just your meetings or your parent-teacher conferences or your depositions, but also a conference setting, a webinar can be done remotely with interpretation in it. So we could actually connect interpreters to your webinar or to your presentation, if you like, and it can be done in one or several languages, thanks to wonderful technology.
That's great that you have been able to pivot so strategically and take advantage of the fact that people are still communicating, but just doing so digitally.
Yeah, and you just have to, you know, you have to adapt.
Yeah.
That's clear. And in addition, actually, we have become a communicator in this crisis as well, because a lot of folks have realized after the first 2 weeks that there is a lack of communication about COVID health measures, or about effective ways to protect yourself, or things like that in other languages. And health officials, government officials have talked about it. There are articles out there, there are interviews out there where they said, you know, we don't have enough in other languages available. And so actually we are now working with several organizations in New York and in Colorado and elsewhere to get that message out. New York State of Health, for example, we're working with the New York Immigration Coalition. These are just two here in New York. We work with the city of Westminster in Colorado to get these messages out to the non-English speaking communities, because that's really important. You know, if they don't know what to do on how to protect themselves and their families, they are putting themselves and other people at risk, and you have a multiplication of, you know, cases and fatalities. So I think it's wonderful that we can actually help, you know, save some lives and with our translations.
Wow. You're really leaning into what's happening and you're helping. That's going beyond just pivoting. You're like really responding to the moment. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's kind of in our DNA, I would say, because we look so much at translation as a means to help other people communicate. So this was not a stretch for us. This was it came naturally in some way. And so I'm very happy and I'm proud of our team that they were so responsive and that everybody's working so hard, you know, getting this out.
So as far as kind of the future goes, what are some of the broader goals that you have for your business going forward beyond the, you know, the current situation?
Well, we would like to position ourselves even more so as a communicator, as a facilitator out there. We would like to gain a little bit more visibility in terms of what we think is sustainable in our industry and what is sustainable for our clients when they want translation or interpretation services. What I mean by that is there's, as I said, there's a lot of technology out there. People think they can use it, or they think they know what it does for them, but they don't really. And we would like to point out that the best possible scenario in translation and interpretation in international communication is utilizing the technology, but harnessing it and with a human component in it. That is, what we would like to bring to the table out there, is for people to realize that for them to be effective communicators in other languages, let alone English, that yes, you need technology, you want to use it, but you need to use it well, and you have to know when you can use what means, so that you can be, that you can guarantee your performance, that you can guarantee effective communication.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've spoken in the past about kind of your business, and you mentioned before that you care a lot about business ethics. Before we wrap up the conversation, I'd love to hear kind of a little bit more on your take on business ethics.
Well, it's one of our pet peeves, really, is the ethics in our business, because there is a lot going on out there in the business world that is not very ethical. And, that is part of what we do every day, is we talk to our clients, we do a lot of client education, and we don't sell them something that is not sustainable or that can't be backed up. So that is one thing. The other thing is, we believe strongly that our vendors, that all the linguists who work so hard for us, all in over 100 languages, we have translators, we have interpreters, we have desktop publishers, we have voiceover talents. They work so hard for us, they should be paid well. And, when you have the technology out there, or people who harness the technology in a way that is not really ethical, just to drive the prices down, that harms people's livelihoods. It harms our reputation as an industry. And it leads to a lot of really poor communication and poor translation products. So we are really, really, really passionate about language. Language is a living thing. Language can be dealt with with technology, yes, but there always has to be a human component in it, and that's really at the basic of the ethics, in our business and in our industry.
Love it. And we believe exactly the same thing with our company. So right there with you. And in closing, Nicole, because we're just about out of time, I'm curious, could you tell us, I know that it's a difficult time for many people, but I'm curious, how is Nicole having fun these days? How are you keeping things light? And
how am I having fun?
And are there any social media handles you would like the CEOs and entrepreneurs watching to use to follow your company?
Well, what do I do for fun? Actually, I cook a lot for fun, but I've done that all my life. This is my second passion, and I would have probably opened a restaurant if I hadn't landed in the language industry. So I share a lot of photos with my coworkers, with my friends, about what we cook, and so that's you can survive staying at home all the time. For other people to join us, obviously we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, and we have a website, which is www.translingua.com. All the social handles can be found there as well. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. With a little click, you can just go on there and find us all there. And our team is on our website as well. You can check everybody out, see their backgrounds. It's a very international team. We speak lots of languages, even internally. We're not just administrators. We have lots of culture in our office and in our staff.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We learned so much, and I'm feeling very inspired by your mission and your style, and I think a lot of other people will be too. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.